Nobody tells you this, but the way you were taught to study is probably the least effective way to study that exists. Sit down, read the textbook, highlight some sentences, close the book, hope it sticks. That's it. That's the whole system most of us grew up on. And it barely works. Today, we're going deep on meta-learning, not just what it is, but how to actually use it, why your brain is working against you the second you finish learning something, and why the institution you spent 12 or 16 years inside of might be the worst possible place to learn how to learn. Let's get into it. What meta-learning actually is. Meta-learning is self-learning. It's learning how to learn. Now that sounds almost too simple to matter. But here's why it changes everything. Every other skill you'll ever pick up in your life is isolated. You learn to cook, and you're better at cooking. You learn a language, and you're better at that language. Each skill sits in its own little box, separate from the others. Meta-learning doesn't work like that. It's not another box. It's the thing that makes every box easier to build. Once you get good at the process of learning itself, something strange happens. New skills stop feeling like starting from zero. You already know how to build a study system, how to test yourself, how to catch when you're fooling yourself into thinking you understand something you don't. So the next skill comes faster, and the one after that, faster still. That's the compounding effect. Most people never notice it because they're too busy grinding through one subject at a time, treating each one like an isolated fire to put out, instead of realizing they could be upgrading the fire extinguisher. Rather than depending entirely on teachers, on courses, on someone else handing you a curriculum, meta-learning puts the steering wheel back in your hands. And in a world that changes as fast as this one does, that's not a nice bonus. That's survival. The learning pyramid. Picture a pyramid. At the very top sits the laziest form of learning that exists. Listening to a lecture, watching a video, scrolling through a summary someone else made. Passive observation, where information floats past you like scenery outside a car window. You feel like you're learning. You're not. You're just present. This is the level where retention is at its absolute lowest. You consume the information, but you never process it, and your brain treats unprocessed information the way your kitchen treats a bag of groceries you never unpack. It just sits there until it goes bad. Now slide down the pyramid. Reading gets you a little further. Discussing it out loud gets you further still. Practicing it with your own hands. Further again. Each step down is more active than the one before it, and each step down buys you more retention. But at the very bottom of the pyramid sits one method that leaves everything else in the dust. Teaching. Here's why teaching works so well. When you have to explain something to another person, you can't fake it. You can't nod along and pretend. You have to organize the chaos in your head into something clean enough for someone else to follow. You have to find the holes in your own understanding, the parts you glossed over, the parts you secretly hoped nobody would ask about. You have to recall information cold, without a script, and explain it clearly enough that a stranger walks away actually understanding it. That's not review. That's a stress test for your knowledge. According to the pyramid, teaching gets you somewhere around 90 to 95% retention. Compare that to the 5 to 10% you get from just sitting there, listening to someone else talk. So here's the shift you need to make. Stop asking yourself, did I understand this? Start asking, could I teach this right now? To someone who knows nothing about it, without notes, without stalling, without saying you kind of just have to feel it. If you can't do that, you didn't learn it. You visited it. There's a difference. Beating the forgetting curve. Here's the problem nobody warns you about. The moment you finally understand something, your brain immediately starts trying to get rid of it. It's called the forgetting curve, and it is not gentle. You learn something today, feel great about it, close the laptop, and without any reinforcement, a huge chunk of that information is gone within days. Not because you're slow, not because you weren't paying attention. That's just how memory is built. Anything the brain doesn't think it needs again gets quietly deleted to make room. Think of your memory like a whiteboard in a busy office. If nobody comes back to reinforce what's written on it, someone eventually wipes it clean to write the next thing. So, how do you stop the wipe? Two tools: spaced repetition and constant revision. Spaced repetition means you don't dump everything into one long cram session and call it done. You come back to the material tomorrow, in 3 days, in a week, in a month. Each time you revisit it, you're not just refreshing the memory, you're reinforcing the structure underneath it, the same way you'd reinforce a bridge instead of pouring the concrete once and just hoping it holds for 50 years. Constant revision is the maintenance work in between. Instead of waiting until the information has already faded and rebuilding it from scratch, you keep touching it just often enough that it never fully disappears. Small check-ins instead of full rescue missions. Put those two together and you get an actual system, not motivation, not hoping you remember, an actual system that fights the natural decay of memory instead of pretending it doesn't exist. Now, there's more to say about the mechanics of the forgetting curve itself, the actual math behind how fast memory decays, and why certain review intervals work better than others. That's a deep enough topic for its own video. But remember these two weapons: spaced repetition, constant revision. Use them or watch your effort evaporate. Why the school system isn't built for this. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. If self-learning is this powerful, why isn't it the main thing schools teach? Why does the system so often feel like it's working against exactly what we just described? Look, okay, let's just be honest about what school is actually optimized for. It is not curiosity, it is compliance. Think about what students are regularly prevented from using. AI tools, often banned outright. Unrestricted internet access, blocked behind a firewall that treats broad access to information like a threat instead of treating it like the entire point of education, alternative learning resources dismissed as distractions instead of supplements, and when a student tries to get around those walls, say, by using a VPN to actually access the information they're curious about, what happens? Detention, not a conversation about why they wanted to learn more. Not curiosity about their curiosity, a punishment for wanting to learn more. That's not a glitch in the system. That's the system working exactly as designed, because the real subject being taught in most schools isn't math, isn't history, isn't science. It's obedience. Stay in your seat, stay on the approved page. Don't go looking for answers we didn't personally hand you. And that mindset is the exact opposite of what an independent, self-directed learner needs to build. That's the part nobody says out loud. So the recommendation here isn't drop out or school is useless. It's simpler than that. Don't let the school system be the ceiling on how much you're allowed to know. Use it for what it's good for, and build your own self-learning system on top of it so your education isn't limited by someone else's firewall. The recap. Let's bring the whole thing together into 3 stages. Stage 1, learn how to learn. Stop treating meta-learning like a side skill and start treating it like the master skill that upgrades every other skill you'll ever pick up. Stage 2, maximize retention. Ride the learning pyramid down to the bottom by teaching what you know instead of just consuming it. Then defend that knowledge against the forgetting curve using spaced repetition and constant revision so it doesn't quietly disappear a week later. Stage 3, become an independent learner. Stop treating institutions as the ceiling of what you're allowed to know. Build the ability to teach yourself anything so your growth is never limited by someone else's firewall, someone else's curriculum, or someone else's permission. Because here's the truth underneath all of this. The world does not reward the people who sat quietly and followed every instruction perfectly. It rewards the people who taught themselves the thing nobody else in the room bothered to learn. All right, that's a wrap for today. We'll see you back here next time.